hotline. Honored to have Speaker of the House, United States, Congressman Mike Johnson. Mike, how you doing?
Hey, Moon, doing great. Good to hear your voice, my friend.
Yeah, man, good to hear you. It's been a while, but I know you. I think you've been busier than me. How about that?
It's been pretty busy, that's for sure.
Well, Mike, let's just jump right into it. We passed the budget a couple weeks ago. I think there was $460 billion, almost $500 billion, and we came back, and I said they'd pass another one. I said, y'all would pass another one that would go to the end of the year, and they did to September 30th. And, of course, my phone been getting blowed up, and I've said things, and a lot of people have said stuff. But I guess my big question is, because we all felt by what we know, that it was a horrendous budget, but yet it was passed anyway. And so talk to us about the budget. Talk to us about what's in this budget, because I saw some things in it. I know the Mike Johnson I know would have never voted for some of the stuff that's in this budget.
Yeah, Moon, thanks for teeing it up. Let me explain what's going on here. And by the way, hope you had a blessed Easter. I hope everybody did.
I did.
I'm getting back on the road this morning to go out across the country, as I have been constantly raising money for the team. But I wanted to get on the phone with you this morning and talk this through, because I knew you had some questions. A lot of people did. So what you're referring to is the appropriations process, right? So there are, every year, the federal government obviously has to be funded. So there's a process that's actually spelled out in the federal law, the 1974 Budget Control Act, that requires Congress to pass 12 separate appropriations bills, right? Each of the 12 sections of the federal government, everything that the federal government does. I mean, from TSA, when you go get on an airplane today and fly somewhere, TSA is there. Our troops have to be paid. So security checks have to go out to people. The Border Patrol agents have to be paid. I mean, all these essential services of the federal government all comes through the appropriations process. So it's a hassle, and it's turned into a debacle, because what's happened over the last 20 years or so is that 1974 law does not apply. There really aren't 12 separate appropriations bills. Instead, Congress is lazy and they don't want to make tough votes, so they push everything to the very end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th, and they pass what everybody knows as a CR, a continuing resolution, and that just patches it up until the end of the fiscal year, the actual year, end of December. And what's happened is, since I've been in Congress for 7 years, every time the Senate jams the House at the very last minute, literally before Christmas Eve, when everybody's trying to go home and be with their families, and they pass an omnibus bill. And that's just a fancy word of saying they take all the spending bills and they lump it into one giant vote. They pass a 4,000 or 5,000 page piece of legislation that Pelosi used to say famously, we'll figure out what's in it after we vote on it, all that stuff. And it spends, over $1.5 trillion or whatever the number is. Everybody votes up or down, everybody goes home. That's no way to run a railroad, and that's the reason that Congress and the nation is in the debt situation that we're in. I mean, our economy is on the brink with almost $35 trillion in federal debt, and that's because Congress has acted irresponsibly.
But Mike, just stop you right there. Is that not just what you did, or just allowed to happen in the House by not killing the bill?
It's not. Let me explain what happened.
Explain the difference.
So, yeah, this is very important for people to understand. So, I became Speaker on October 25th of last year, right? The fiscal year, September 30th, had already passed. We were already in a continuing resolution to keep the government funded so it didn't shut down and all these essential services didn't stop. The stagecoach was literally flying off the side of the cliff, and they handed me the reins, right? So I had literally 2 weeks before the continuing resolution expired, and they handed it to me and said, here, go work a miracle. Well, it's not possible to do it in that time, so we had to patch it up with another CR to allow time for us to settle in. Now, instead of just doing a regular CR, a continuing resolution, what I did was we instituted a brand new idea. It's called the laddered CR. What does that mean? Well, we broke the big, massive omnibus bill up. We wanted to break the omnibus fever. That's no way for Congress to run. And I always said, and all conservatives said, if we were in charge, we'd do it differently. So we did. So we split it up into two separate packages, 6 bills and 6 bills. At least it broke the omnibus fever. So we went into the beginning of the year with those two deadlines looming, February and March, and we had to get the government funded. And so we passed the House. We got it. We kicked it into gear. We passed 8 of the 12 separate appropriations bills and sent them over to the Senate. The Senate sat on them, didn't do anything with them. They only passed 3. So we wound up at the end in what they call a conference committee, where everything's you try to iron out the differences between the bills and finish it all up, and that's what happened. Now, look, the final product is not the bill that Mike Johnson and Moon Griffon would have drafted, right? But here's the reality. Okay, this is what everybody's got to understand. Right now, we have the smallest House majority in U.S. history. To advance any conservative policy preferences, I can only lose one vote. Literally, we have a one-vote margin, okay? And because several House Republicans decided last fall it's now acceptable to block our own procedural rule votes, okay, we can't anymore bring our own preferred legislation to the floor to just pass it with a simple majority. We can't even use our one-vote majority because instead we have to collect Democrat votes to pass the big must-pass legislation like appropriations. That's what they call suspension vote, a suspension of the rules to bring the vote to the floor, and that requires 2/3 of the body to agree. So there you go, right out of the blocks, because our own team has decided we're going to block our ability to bring our bills to the floor. We have to work with some Democrats or nothing happens, right? So the Democrats who control the White House and the Senate, remember, Biden's the president, Schumer runs the Senate. We only have control of the House and barely have control of that. They know that when we go into the negotiations process, that the House Republicans are not sticking together, okay? So they're on the high ground in negotiation. Man, we worked so hard to build consensus around what we wanted to do, but we couldn't do it because, it all falls apart, and that's what happened. So we were pushed to the end. We have to make two simple choices. We either fight as hard as we did to advance our policies and preferences in these spending bills, okay, as far as we possibly can, and keep the government open, or we refuse to fund the government and we shut it all down. Now you heard a lot of conservatives, a lot of my close friends say, shut it down, shut the government down, okay? Well, that sounds great initially, all right? This is what everybody has to understand. The executive branch holds all the cards, right? The Biden White House can make it extremely painful for the American people in a shutdown. And believe me, they're desperate enough they would do anything because Biden's approval rating is so low. He would immediately, with the help of all the media, of course, blame House Republicans 100% for every ounce of the pain. And you're talking about missed paychecks, canceled flights, unpatrolled border sections, just on and on and on. Everything the federal government does.
But Mike, this is the same thing we've been hearing year after year after year after year about all this stuff that's going to happen, and nothing ever changes. You know, and I know you got thrown in a tough position. I'm not even arguing with you on that. But, Mike, on the flip side, I mean, when they passed the bill and y'all passed the bill, it wasn't a 72-hour rule. I think that was something you wanted. And number two is, can you honestly tell me you read everything in the bill? Because if you did, I'm worried. Because some of the stuff that's in this bill that's coming out floors me.
Hang on. I'm going to tell you about all that. But this is what you have to understand, okay? Remember, binary choice, okay? If we don't pass it by two Fridays ago, okay, the government shuts down, all right? And you say, well, that's the same. Everybody always says, and there's no pain, nothing happens. But listen, the last time there was a shutdown, Trump was in the White House, okay? Right now, Biden's in the White House in an election year. He's desperate. He's underwater, okay? Remember, all those federal agencies that fund and do all this stuff for everybody's life, they're controlled by the president, not the House, not the Congress, right? So if the government switch turns off, the executive, the president of the United States can make it so painful on everybody immediately because they have total discretion on what to do with the shutdown, okay, how soon the pain starts. And they would amp it up to a 10 immediately. And then the Democrats would have the bully pulpit. They'd have all the legislative leverage because here's the other thing. This is so critical for everybody to understand. In order to get out of a shutdown, okay, we would have to have a 2/3 vote of the House to do it. That means you'd need 80, 90 Democrats to agree on the bill to reopen the government. And that bill, the amount of flesh that we would have to give for them to give in and agree would be the ugliest policy thing you've ever seen. All right. So here's what happened. So because the shutdown would be so terrible, we fought on the appropriations bills. I was hemmed in by the top line spending numbers that my predecessor negotiated. Okay, I inherited all this because I remember I was after the end of the fiscal year. They handed me the reins of the stagecoach going off the cliff, and we got actually some wins on this bill. Okay, nobody's talking about that right now, but remember, 72% of that package that we voted on is defense spending. The one 2 Fridays ago, we increased defense spending. Every conservative, every Republican knows why we need to do that. We've got hot wars around the world, around the globe. It's a dangerous time. We kept non-defense discretionary spending flatlined. That's a huge hit to the Democrats. Then we included big victories in it.
Mike,
we got
hold
the
up,
biggest pay raise for the troops in decades.
You're saying it's a huge hit to the Democrats. You know who was happy about this bill? Democrats, Biden, the media. There are people the ones happy about this bill. Mike, at midnight, you're going to have to explain that to me because they're pumped up about it.
No, they're doing that because they see a Republican division and they're desperate because they're going into an election cycle. But let me tell you something. We got the highest troop pay raises in decades. They didn't want that. Democrats fight against defense spending. We cut nonsense out of the DEI programs in the military. We got $50 million out of their programs. In Department of Homeland Security, we increased the baseline for enforcement for when Trump takes over in January. This is critically important. Trump is not going to have an open border. He's going to stop, detain, and deport these people. But guess what? The Biden administration has shut down a bunch of detaining facilities, right? So in this bill, we included the highest number of ICE detention beds and Border Patrol agents in history.